This is WFYI News Now. It's April 30th, and I'm Abriana Herron. On today's show, a new investigation shows the former Center Grove Superintendent used public money for personal expenses. The state looks into a fatal case of tick disease. And people with disabilities who receive housing through the Indianapolis Housing Agency are at a greater risk of being impacted by systemic issues that face the organization.
The voucher program helps those who are most vulnerable to being homeless in our community, and it needs to function correctly.
Those stories are coming up, but first, the Indy Juneteenth parade is on hold for 2025. Our partners at Mirror Indy report the organization was unable to secure a location for the parade with the city. The festival will still take place at the Indiana State Fairgrounds. The organization has formed a partnership with the fairgrounds to host the festival and parade in 2026 and 2027. This is the 8th year Indy Juneteenth has organized a celebration. Juneteenth is a federal holiday celebrated on June 19th to commemorate the end of slavery. The former Center Grove Superintendent used public money for personal expenses, according to a state investigation. From WFYI's Education Desk, Sydney Daudelin has more on the reported misuse of funds.
Former Center Grove Superintendent Rich Arkanoff is accused of taking nearly $50,000 in unreported time off and failing to repay personal expenses while leading the district. That's according to an audit by the State Board of Accounts. The district has not yet taken legal action against Arkanoff, who abruptly retired in January of last year after district officials discovered the discrepancies. Center Grove officials said they have updated payroll tracking, credit card oversight, and financial reporting procedures to prevent similar issues in the future. I'm Sydney Daudelin.
The state is investigating a fatal case of ehrlichiosis in Floyd County. It's a tick disease that causes flu-like symptoms, but if left untreated, it could kill you. Indiana Public Broadcasting's Rebecca Thiel reports the Indiana Department of Health warns Hoosiers to take precautions against tick bites.
The IDOH says Hoosiers are at risk for tick-borne illnesses in every part of the state, and not just Lyme disease. Rocky Mountain spotted fever, for example, can be fatal if it's not treated in the first few days. The IDOH urges Hoosiers who feel sick after finding a tick on them to see a doctor immediately. Most tick diseases can be treated with antibiotics. These diseases have been on the rise for the past decade. More warm days can allow ticks to feed on people longer during the year. It also allows new disease-carrying ticks, like the Gulf Coast tick, to live farther north than before. The IDOH says to wear bug spray with DEET when you go outside, or another Environmental Protection Agency-approved ingredient. You should always check for ticks on your body and clothes when you come inside, and remove them safely with the tweezers, making sure not to crush or burn the tick. For Indiana Public Broadcasting, I'm Rebecca Thiel.
And for our final story today. For years, Indianapolis's housing agency has struggled to serve the thousands of local, low-income residents who need stable housing. For people with disabilities, the systemic issues can be amplified. While reporting on the issue for my new feature story, I found that the barriers people face are varied and persistent. With a cane in his right hand, 60-year-old Clifton Jordan walked up to the podium at a recent IHA board meeting. He asked for two things from the agency: better security and parking accommodations at the John Barton Annex apartment complex.
I'm an amputee above the knee, and I still get out and work. Come in at 11:10, and it's full, and I have to park all the way in the back.
IHA's mission to aid low-income families, seniors, and persons with disabilities in Indianapolis has been mired by years of mismanagement and dysfunction. A federal takeover of the agency a year ago has resulted in little change. The waitlist to get a housing voucher is currently closed, and people can wait well over a year to get assistance. In addition, IHA has not awarded any new non-elderly disabled vouchers and has sunset its homeless preference voucher distribution. People with disabilities have consistently had to overcome additional barriers in order to obtain affordable and accessible housing in Indianapolis. Amy Nelson, the executive director of the Fair Housing Center of Central Indiana, says in other cities, housing authorities are able to effectively provide services to low-income residents without creating hurdles.
The voucher program helps those who are most vulnerable to being homeless in our community, and it needs to function correctly, as it does in cities all across America.
If someone with a disability is able to get a voucher, they are not guaranteed housing. A 2014 study from the Fair Housing Center of Central Indiana shows an 82% refusal rate of people with vouchers, and in predominantly white areas, that rate went up to 90%. Newly appointed IHA CEO Yvonne Bean says the agency serves nearly 20,000 marginalized families in Indianapolis, and a decline in federal support has influenced property upkeep.
It's made it a little more challenging to address the deferred maintenance needs that exist at all of our properties, and that's across the country. It's not specific to IHA.
An analysis done by the Joint Center for Housing Studies states that less than 4% of housing units nationwide are considered livable for people with disabilities. In the late 1980s, amendments to the Federal Fair Housing Act added basic accessibility requirements for housing units built after 1991. The problem, Nelson says, is that for anything built before that date, there are exceptions.
That's a lot of housing, particularly older housing that's probably going to be more affordable, that is then not available to those who might have any kind of mobility-based impairment as a result.
Landlords are legally required to provide people with disabilities reasonable accommodations, a rule or a structural change to ensure a unit is functional. But different types of disabilities require different modifications, and some landlords may ignore requests. Longtime voucher holder Christina Hornaday Alberts had asked for grab bars to be installed in her shower. The lack of modifications resulted in a fall that injured her in February 2024. She says she was stuck in the bathtub for 2 hours with a broken tibia.
And that was one of the big reasons why my landlord just doesn't want to, renew my lease, because she doesn't want the liability anymore.
Hornaday Alberts has since filed a complaint against IHA citing multiple Fair Housing Act violations. That's one way that people with disabilities can try to reconcile public housing issues, but it can be a long, expensive process. People with disabilities like Clifton Jordan, who receive housing through IHA, keep showing up to board meetings asking for improvements.
I've been there for 7 years, and I haven't seen any changes yet. And I hope that we can get some changes.
IHA continues to fund vouchers that have already been issued and house people in properties across the city. I'm Abriana Herron. That's all for today's episode of WFYI News Now. Our podcast is produced by Drew Daudelin and Zach Bundy, with support from the news team at WFYI and public media journalists across the state. Our news director is Sarah Neal-Estes. Kendall Antron produced our music. And I'm your host, Abriana Herron. If you like today's episode, remember to subscribe and share, and follow WFYI on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and YouTube to check in on our newsroom throughout the day. Thanks for listening. We'll be back tomorrow.